Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Soul Reaver, a stamina DPS primary build made for that purpose, but can also play tank and healer if it needs to. The cool thing about this build is that it is so unique in its setup that it actually is a really versatile build for the type of play you want to do. So, before I get into it and explain any more, I do want to give a little bit of heads up on next week, or what's going on the rest of this week and next week. This is going to be the last Necromancer build I release this week. Starting next week, I'm going to just start releasing builds for every class in different ways. So I'm going to release Templar builds, Nightblade, DK, whatever. I'm just going to release the builds that I want to release first, and then go through the process of breaking it down into all the different stuff. And trust me, I have a lot coming, but let's go ahead and get into this one. This is the Soul Reaver character. As you can see, that's the name I classified it as. It is a Nord Necromancer. We have 64 points into stamina for this as a mostly as a stamina DPS type setup. You can see we have 12,000 magicka, 21k health, 30k into 30k stamina, with a 2966 weapon damage, 41% weapon critical, 16k spell, 16k physical resistance, and we're going to go on down here, and you can see we do have the lever Mundus Stone to increase our spell and physical penetration. We are running Dubious Cameron Throne for the max health, stamina, and stam recovery. Our Tam Takeaway Broth is another one you can run with this particular setup, but remember, this thing can also be a tank and a healer if it needs to be. This is just showing you as its primary setup. Moving on to the equipment, starting with the monster or the food. Depending on what role you play, you're going to use either braised rabbit with spring vegetables for a greater DPS loadout for stamina DPS. You're going to use the Tri-Stat food, Longfin pasty with melon sauce, or any of the Tri-Stat foods that are CP 150 to 160 that give you max health, stamina, and magicka when you play a tank or a healer. With the way this build is set up, that is probably the best option there. And then also, if you're playing a DPS using the power pots, stamina power pots, is going to give you the greater ability for doing stamina DPS. Spell power pots for when you're playing a healer, and then also tripods for when you're playing a tank. Alright, let's go over the sets. Starting with our monster set, we are running Veladrits. Veladrits is an awesome monster set for this particular build, because playing a Necromancer, especially a stamina version, uses a lot of disease damage, and this reflects that, and I really like how that does. It adds one piece, adds weapon damage, 2 pieces. When you deal damage, you have a 20% chance to spawn 3 disease spores in front of you after 1 second that deal 13,209 disease damage to the enemy they hit. This effect can occur once every 9 seconds. We are wearing this in medium on the head and shoulders. Both pieces are medium. This is a medium armor build, by the way. Moving on to the chest. We are running the Gladiator set. This is going to give you, on the 2-piece, weapon critical, 3-piece, weapon critical, 4-piece, weapon damage, and then when your target is under 25% health, add 1800 weapon damage to your light and heavy attacks. The Necromancer doesn't have an execute, so this is another way that you can take advantage of a set to give you something that's similar to an execute in your light and heavy attacks. So it's kind of that trade-off kind of thing. Going on to the next set that we have Briarheart, and Briarheart's a really good set for this particular setup. And the reason I say that is because it does, the 2-piece does weapon critical, 3 pieces stamina, 4 pieces critical, and then the 5-piece, when you deal critical damage, you have a 10% chance to increase your weapon damage by 449 for 10 seconds. While this effect is active, your critical strikes heal for 669 health. The effect can occur once every 15 seconds. The nice thing about this set is it's both a offensive set and a support set in one. So it gives you that offense by when you deal critical damage, it gives you this weapon damage on a 10% chance. And then while it's active, you also can heal yourself, and that healing can last for 10 seconds, but it can happen every 15 seconds. So you're going to have a 5-second downtime in between when this is active and when it's not. So you're still going to get a lot of weapon damage out of it, and you're going to get self-healing. Alright, let's go over the traits that we have on the gear. Starting with the monster set, we have Sturdy on the helm. On the chest, we have Reinforced, and on the legs, we also have Sturdy. As you can see, I have tri-stats in these 3 pieces. This is going to give you the ability to be flexible with the character, to be more of a hybrid. So if you need to be a tank, you can be a tank. If you need to be a healer, you can be a healer. And when you need to be a damage dealer, you can be a damage dealer. Like I said, this build is built primarily for stamina damage, but it can do the other roles if it needs to. On the smaller pieces, we are running 4 Divines. And on the small pieces, we do have max stamina enchants to give us that maximum stamina for a character. That's how we can reach this 30k with the 21k health. And then on the jewelry, we are running 2 Trirunes again to give us that greater max magicka, stamina, and health, so we can play all 3 roles of the tank, healer, and damage dealer. And then onto the necklace, we are using a shield plate enchant on an infused piece. This is going to reduce your bash cost by 486 in stamina, and also your block cost by 324 stamina. And with it being infused, it does enhance that enhancement, the enchantment, by 60%. Alright, moving on to the weapons. Starting with the axe, we do have a 2-handed axe that is our primary DPS weapon. And we can use, we are using the Briarheart Battle Axe. As you can see, we do have it changed to Nirnhond with a disease damage enchant. Like I said, Necromancers deal a lot with disease damage. I felt it was befitting to this. You can use a poison enchant or an absorb stamina if you so choose. On the back bar, we do have a Briarheart Bow infused with a weapon damage and a spell damage enchant. This is going to give you the ability to boost your weapon and spell damage, mostly for the weapon damage. But we're using it infused to boost the enhancement. Again, this is just for the stamina version. Now, when you want to play a tank, we do have a sword and shield, as you can see. And the sword is equipped with a decisive trait and absorbs stamina on it. The shield itself is sturdy with a multi-effect enchantment to give us that tri-stat effect, again, so we can take advantage of all 3 attributes when we're tanking. And the reason I did sturdy on 3 of the pieces is this way it gives us that better block cost reduction for when we do need to tank, or even when we're playing DPS and we need to block. It helps us save our resources better in our stamina. For when we play healer, we have a restoration staff, and this is going to give us weakening on it. And the reason I chose the weakening on the resto staff is because it's just really good that way, because it reduces weapon and spell damage of the enemy by 348 for 5 seconds. This is a powered staff, so it does increase your healing done by 9%. And then when you are also tanking or playing healer, you're going to use the Briarheart Maul. This is going to apply crushing with an infused enchantment or infused trait. The enchantment is Crusher. This one reduces spell and physical damage by 2,108 for 5 seconds. And the fact that you're using this on a weapon that can hit multiple targets, this allows you to keep Crusher applied to more targets more effectively if you need to. And when you're tanking, that's really good. When you're doing playing a healer, it's also really good. It's really good for your group. And that is the gear. Now we're going to move over to skills and talk about those. So for the class itself, or the build itself, I have unlocked every stamina option I possibly can, plus some magicka ones just in case I want to use them, but mostly stamina because this is primarily a stamina build. With our weapons, we do have, or with the class, make sure you get all the class passives for playing all 3 roles, tank, healer, and damage dealer. And unlock the skills that pertain to that role to give you options available. Alright, moving on to the weapons. 2-handed, unlock all the skills you want and the passives. This is going to give you the greater benefit for using that weapon depending on the situation you're in. Like if you're playing PvP versus PvE, there's different tools that are going to give you different advantages and work better for you depending on the situation. Moving on to sword and shield. We do have all the sword and shield passives unlocked. We have the skills we want to use. and of course all the passives. We do not use dual wield on this build, so we do not have it unlocked. We do use a bow, so we have all the skills unlocked and passives to reflect our playstyle with this character on that. And then we have all the restoration stuff unlocked for when we do play healer. Now moving on to the armor, this is a medium armor build, so light armor is not really necessary, but we do wear one piece of light armor to take advantage of the Undaunted passives and also the passives that they offer us, because they can reflect us when we're playing certain roles. So Grace reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 4% for each piece of light armor worn. That's not bad, 4%. You won't really notice it, but it does play a difference, especially when you're tanking and you get a snare or something applied to you. It does make it go down a little bit quicker. It's a very small drop, but it's enough to see a difference. Also, this reduces the cost of sprint by 3% for each piece of light armor worn. Evocation, increase your magic recovery by 4% for each piece of light armor equipped by 4%. Reduces the cost of your magic abilities by 2% for each piece of light armor equipped. And as you can see, we do have 2% reduced cost and 4% mag recovery. Moving on to spell warding. Increase your spell resistance by 363 for each piece of light armor equipped. That's 363 extra spell resist. Medium armor. We have every passive unlocked. Increase your weapon critical by 328 for each piece of medium armor equipped. As you can see, we get 1643 because we are wearing 5 pieces of medium armor. Moving on to Windwalker. Increase your stamina recovery by 4% for each piece of medium armor equipped. We have a 20% stamina recovery. Reduces the cost of stamina. The stamina cost of your abilities by 2% per piece of medium armor equipped. Total of 10% reduced cost. And then we have improved sneak, which reduces the cost of your sneak by 7% for each piece of medium armor equipped. We have a 35% reduced sneak cost. And we have reduced the detection size of your sneak by 5% for each piece of medium armor equipped. We have a 25% reduced sneak capability, or detection capability. We also have agility. When wearing 5 or more pieces of medium armor, you increase your weapon damage by 15%. We have athletics. This one increases your movement speed bonus and sprint by 3% for each piece of medium armor. As you can see, that's a 15%. And then reduce your roll dodge cost by 4% for each piece of medium armor equipped, a 20% reduced roll dodge cost. Now moving on to heavy armor, we are using one piece of heavy, so we are going to take advantage of those passives for it. And we are going to have Resolve, increase your physical and spell resist by 362 for each piece of heavy armor equipped. As you can see, it does give you 362 extra spell and physical resistance. Constitution, increase your health recovery by 4% per each piece of heavy armor equipped. We do get a 4%, but mainly we want it for the Constitution bonus. For the next part of the Constitution bonus, you restore 108 magic and stamina when you take damage for each piece of heavy armor equipped. This effect can occur every 4 seconds. That's a small amount to a lot of people, but when you take into account your recovery rate, this actually plays a huge thing into your character, because every time you take damage, you're getting those resources back every 4 seconds. So every 2 seconds you get your base recovery. Every time you heavy attack, you get your recovery, and then you get this on top of it. Next, we have Juggernaut. Increase your max health by 2% for each piece of heavy armor equipped. Maximum, our current bonus is 2%. And that's it for our armor passes. We're going to move on to the world skills. You can be a werewolf with this, and it is very powerful. You can even be a vampire, and it is very powerful, because it just unlocks new tools for you to use if you so choose. Moving on to the guild, Fighters Guild. Make sure you unlock all the skills and passives that you want to use on the character. I really do just pick the skills that best reflect my playstyle. So, Mage's Guild, the same thing. I chose the ones that would reflect my playstyle with this character in giving me the best options. Sejic Order, same thing. I unlock all the passives and the abilities that I think would offer me the best tools necessary to play my character more effectively in different situations. And then moving on to Undaunted. I have every Undaunted passive unlocked, because you never know when you need a synergy. So this just helps with synergies for your group, and also they also help you with different functions. Make sure you get these two passives. Undaunted Command, this one activating an ally synergy restores 4% of your max health, stamina, and magicka. As you can see, this adds 927 health, 1,214 stamina, and 510 magicka return whenever I activate a synergy. And if it's something like energy orbs, and it gives me 3,960 stamina or magicka, that gets applied to this as well. So that's like almost 4K back. Moving on to Undaunted Metal. This one increases your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% for each type of armor worn. So as long as you're wearing a piece of heavy, light, and medium, you can take advantage of this passive. And we are wearing 5 medium, 1 light, 1 heavy. So we do have the benefits from this, and that's why we have the 6% bonus from it. Alright, moving on to Alliance skills. Again, I just get the skills that reflect my ability to play my character and what I think would be best. Same thing with the support skills. Moving on to the Nord racials. Now, I chose Nord for this because I felt Nord really reflected the survivability aspect. Really good. Especially for a character who wants to have that extra chunk of survivability without sacrificing being, you know, something else. Like, this way you don't have to sacrifice the ability to get higher resistances and stuff, because the race actually comes naturally affected by that in their passives. So let's take a look at their passives. They have Reaver, and this one increases your experience with handed skill line by 15%. That's why I do use a two-handed axe. Also increase the duration of your consumed drinks by 15 minutes. So this does make your drink things like Dubious Cameron Throne and Witch Mother's Potent Brew last for 20 minutes longer. So, or 15 minutes longer. With the additional of your crafting passives, that's a 35-minute length added. Resist Frost. Increase your maximum health by 1,000 and cold resistance by 2,310. If you guys don't understand how cold resistance works, anytime that you take cold damage, whether it is from magicka or stamina, this will reduce that incoming damage through physical and spell resistance by that much. Most of the time it's magicka based, so it's going to be whatever your mag resistance is plus this. On top of that, you gain immunity to chilled status effect. That means if you're fighting a boss encounter or a monster or creature in a dungeon that can apply chilled to you, you cannot be affected by it. And it also applies for PvP as well. Stalwart. Increase your max stamina by 1,500. When you take damage, you gain 5 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 10 seconds. This makes the Nord a very effective ultimate gen race. Now it is every 10 seconds, so it's kind of low. Moving on to Rugged. This one increases your spell and physical resist by 3,960, and that's why this build works so well this way. Now if you are playing a different race, you would have to change the traits around on the armor to play it more effectively in all 3 roles, and that's because of the way this is set up. I chose Nord for a reason. It is the best for this setup. Now I'm saying that because I know it sounds bad when I say that, but it is the best option for this setup because of this one benefit. Because this allows it to tank more effectively than other races in medium armor. Alright, now we're going to go over the skills that I chose to put on my bar for when I play Stamina DPS. And that is Carve. This one, what it does is it focuses your strength into a mighty swing, dealing 6,297 physical damage to enemies in front of you, and causing them to bleed for an additional 12,045 physical damage over 10 seconds. Next we have Venom Skull. This is a great spammable. Lob an exploding skull at an enemy, dealing 7,557 poison damage. Every third cast of this ability deals 20% increased damage. While slotted, casting a Necromancer ability while you are in combat will count towards the third cast. The next ability we have on our bar is Blighted Blast Bones. Now this one is really cool. I like using this. Summon a decaying skeleton from the ground. After 2.5 seconds, the skeleton runs after the target and explodes. When it gets close to them, dealing 12,597 disease damage to all enemies nearby, and applying Major Defile to them for 4 seconds, reducing their healing received by 30%, or healing received and health recovery by 30%. creates a corpse on death. Next we have Executioner. This one you spin around and strike an enemy down, dealing 4,064 physical damage, dealing up to 350% more damage to the enemy with less than 50% health. So this is really, you want to save this for when you get the enemy below 50% health before you start activating it, so you can take greater advantage of that 350% more damage. And then the next ability we have is Skeletal Archer. Skeletal Archer is a very powerful ability. I know it doesn't seem like it, but unearth a Skeletal Archer from the dirt to fight by your side for 16 seconds. The Archer attacks the closest enemy for 2 seconds, dealing 2,517 physical damage. Each time the Archer deals damage, its next attack will do 10% more damage than the previous attack. Creates a corpse on death. Moving on to the final ultimate we are using, and that is Flawless Dawnbreaker. Great ability for anyone that plays a stamina DPS character, because it does, while slotted, your weapon damage is increased by 5%. But it also does arm yourself with Meridia's Sacred Sword and dispense her Retribution, dealing 10,506 physical damage to enemies in front of you, and an additional 12,726 physical damage over 6 seconds. So it's like a conal AoE damage ability that can actually do a lot of damage. If you crit with this thing can crit upwards to 20k. It's ridiculous. Moving on to the back bar, where we have our bow. Starting with the first ability, we have Rearming Trap. This is going to set a shrapnel blade trap at your location, which takes 1.5 seconds to arm, lasts 1 minute. When triggered, the trap deals 2,435 physical damage and an additional 6,984 physical damage over 6 seconds, immobilizing the enemy for 6 seconds, and grants you minor force, increasing your critical damage by 10%. After being triggered, the trap resets and can be triggered one more time. So it goes off, it lasts for 6 seconds, and then resets and reactivates and lasts another 6 seconds. So it lasts a total of 12 in its condition of minor force and the damage it does. Next up, we have Poison Injection. This one, shoot an arrow coated in Bandari poison at an enemy, dealing 4,318 poison damage and an additional 8,710 poison damage over 10 seconds. The damage over time deals up to 260% more damage to enemies under 50% health. It's a minor, it's like a small execute. And if you can keep this applied really good, you can actually just constantly dish out more and more damage the lower the health they get. Alright, next ability we have is Endless Hail. Launch a multitude of arrows into the sky to rain down, dealing 1,116 physical damage to enemies in the target area for every 0.5 seconds for 10 seconds. And then the next one is Razor Caltrops. Hurl an exploding ball of caltrops that scatter over the area, dealing 1,674 physical damage every 1 second and reducing the movement speed by 30%. While the ball of caltrops initially explodes, it deals an immediate 5,221 physical damage. The last ability we have is a synergy, and that is hurl webs to ensnare, and that's, or Shadow Silk, okay? But hurl webs to ensnare your foes, reducing their movement speed of the enemies in the area by 50%. After 5 seconds, the webs explode, dealing 7,431 physical damage to the enemies. A ranged ally targeting an enemy in the webs can activate the Black Widow synergy, dealing 8,604 poison damage to the enemy and summoning 2 spiders to attack for 15 seconds. The spiders bite enemies for 2,087 physical damage and can poison them for 9,000 damage over 10 seconds. The last ability we have here is our Pestilence Colossus, and this is the ultimate from the class itself. Unleash a Pestilence Flesh Colossus to pulverize enemies in the area. The Colossus smashes the ground 3 times over 3 seconds, dealing 8,913 damage, 9,804 damage, and then 10,698 disease damage with the first, second, and third smash. Each smash applies major vulnerability to the enemy for 3 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 30%. This is the ultimate I use most of the time instead of Dawnbreaker. The reason why is because this does the minor vulnerability, and if I set this just right before I swap bars, then I can take advantage of Carve, Venom Skull, and this from that major vulnerability. And my allies can take advantage of the major vulnerability as well. Alright, so that is that. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about CP. When I do the CP in the roles, the CP will change between the different roles. But for this, I'm just going to show you how I have it set up naturally when I play the character in its natural form. We have 66 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 22%. We have 2 in a medium armor focus, increasing physical and spell resistance by 209, or our physical resistance, sorry, by 209 for wearing 5 pieces of medium armor. We have 2 in the spell shield. This increases your spell resist by 209. And then moving on over here, we have 56 in the thick skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 20%. We have 56 in the Hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 12%, and then 56 into Elemental Defender, reducing your damage taken from Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 12%. Now moving on over here, we have 32 in a Quick Recovery. This increases your healing received by 8%, and then moving on to the Green Tree, we have 40 into Warlord. This reduces your break free cost by 16%, 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%, 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%, and then moving on over here, we have 75 in a Mooncalf. This increases your stamina recovery by 14%, 43 into Tenacity. This increases your magic and stamina return of your fully charged heavy attacks by an extra 10%, and then moving on over here, we have 40 into Tumbling, reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%, and another 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your cost of block by 16%. Moving on to the Blue Tree, we have 43 into Bless. This is just to increase your healing done by 10%. This is if you're using like Vigor or something on your bar. This way you can give out that extra healing to your allies from Vigor. You don't have to use this if you don't want to. Like I said, this is everything about these builds, the character builds, is just showing you the suggested setup. Okay, these are not set in stone setups. These are just suggested setups. Moving on. We have 35 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This is going to increase our damage with light and heavy attacks from our two-handed weapon, and if you are a werewolf as well, it will increase that by 20%. We have Master at Arms 40. This is going to increase your direct damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. I do want to point out a few passives that we do unlock because we have this setup. Retaliation, when you block a heavy attack, your next light attack used within 37 seconds deals 30% more damage. That does apply to this as well. That's a 50% increase in that light attack damage. And then you also get Reposit. When you block a melee attack, you have a 15% chance to deal 6,108 physical damage to the enemy. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. And then we also get Butcher. Increase your damage done with light and heavy attacks by 5% to enemies below 25% health. This is really great with the Kvetch's Gladiator set because you get that 1800 weapon damage added to your damage, and now you've got this 25% or 5%, sorry, here you've got 20% here. That together, the two of them, is 25%. Then you add 1800 weapon damage on top of it, plus another 16% from direct damage. And light attacks and heavy attacks are considered direct damage with the two-handed weapon. Plus, you also have 56 in the Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage by 12%. Light and heavy attacks are considered physical damage. So lots of damage output. Next, we have 40 in the Thaumaturge. This increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 16%, and then 56 into Precise Strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing done with stamina abilities by 20%. Now remember, this build is primarily used for a stamina DPS, but you can be a tank and healer with it, and I will show you in the roles videos later on how you can set those up as those roles, and you guys can play them. I'm also going to show you the damage dealer role, the tank role, and the healer role, so that way you guys get a clear picture of all three. Another thing before I go, the reason I do this with all the skills, just so you guys know why I unlock all the different skills, is because you never know what skills you might want to use in different situations. In some situations, I might want to use Runeth Scythe as a spammable as my DPS character because it hits multiple targets. So instead of using something like this, Venom Skull, I can actually use this as a spammable instead. So you really learn your skills, and that's why I unlock so many different skills to use, is this way I can learn all the different skills and how they work, and I can use them in different situations, from PvE to PvP to dungeons and trials. Alright, so now you guys are probably wondering what does this thing look like in action. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the stamina setup for this, and then in the other worlds I will show you the other things, and I will actually show them being used in dungeons as well. So, to start off, you're going to drink a potion, traps, light attack, poison injection, light attack, endless hail, light attack, into caltrops, light attack, and then you're going to throw out the poison thing, swap bars, light attack before you do carve, light attack skull, light attack blast bones, light attack executioner strike, light attack summon your skeleton. By then, you know, right now I did 16k DPS, which isn't a whole lot. I'm going to wait for that to reset. Hopefully my skeleton will die before it does, and he won't take a pop shot at it. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down there, I'm going to redo that. I'm going to show you guys this at its full force. Alright, so potion. Oh, I didn't even get to get my last executioner strike off. 24,000 DPS by myself on that little guy. This guy has the equivalent health, just to let you know, of basically having what a boss would have in a dungeon, in normal or veteran. It's basically around that area. You're not going to be soloing bosses in a dungeon, so there's no reason to parse on a 3 million skeleton, in my opinion, unless you're doing 3 million damage. Now, this is what it would be like if you were playing in a really good, well-rounded group with a lot of active synergies and things like that going on. I'm going to show you guys what this is. And I shouldn't say really good organized group. It's more of an organized group setup. If you're in a truly organized group setup, this is what it would be like, more or less, for your DPS. So, potion, same thing we did before. Come on. There we go. Now, I am going to do my spammable this next time. I didn't do it that time because of... There we go with the spammable. As you can see, our DPS just went to almost 40k, and this is without a Maelstrom bow. With a Maelstrom bow and even more in-game sets, you can actually pull greater DPS with this if you're really good with the rotation and stuff. So, alright, stopping there. 34k DPS is where it rounded out to. I started to slow down on my rotation and kind of screwed it up there, and I burned through a lot of my resources, and that was a bad idea. But I just wanted to show you guys what this thing can look like if you're in a group, in a controlled, not only in a controlled environment, like in an organized group, but also if you're in a dungeon running with people, and this way you guys can understand how the DPS works. Like I said, if I was gonna see this character, like if I wanted to really test this character's ability to parse on a big boss in a trial, then I would parse this or on this up here. And that's what I would do. But I'm looking at mostly in pug situations here, because I know a lot of people pug and they want to see what their character can be capable of. And that is the Soul Reaver, guys. This is like I said, this is a Nord Necromancer build. You can be any race with this if you so choose. Nord just happens to be the best at it with this particular setup. Like I said, if you want to play a different race with it, you do have to make some minor adjustments to get the resistances to equal out to what the Nord can do. And that's not easy. So, and that's it for this character build. I hope you guys like the video. If you do, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.